Hey guys, it's Mike at Narxoleptic Customs. Guys, podcast episode 30. Holy jeez. We are going to just keep rolling these things and rolling and rolling and rolling until we have talked to everybody in every form or fashion of the automotive industry. So sit down and get ready. Today we're talking to Ryan Mueller of Mueller Performance in Paris, Texas. This guy's been around the LS game for a long time. As you'll hear in here, he prefers Turbo LS, which is always the way that we like to go. He's been a part of some really, really fast cars, helping guys get their stuff together, putting the right combos together to make sure they go fast. I came across him, actually was name dropped Chris Harper and Jonathan Ehrmann. If you'll remember, they were on the podcast a few months ago. We'll have an update on Warhawk and Kool-Aid coming very soon. Yeah, that's going to be a fun one. I've also got some videos coming. I've got to get with Jared Bowen, who's painting it, of old school sheet metal repair. So we're going to hit that before. We are into the hunt for Rocky Mountain Race Week. We are 2.5 weeks out. It starts September 13th. So I got the new harness in yesterday, new seat harness updated. I've got to build a harness bar or bend a harness bar and get it mounted, and the cart will be ready to go. We got oil change and things like that, just simple stuff. And to get with our tire sponsor, Hiwassee Tire and Lube, to get us extra set of tires mounted up on some spare rims we have, because we are going to literally do burnouts every time we leave a stoplight. I don't care. We're going to have fun on this trip. And we're going to podcast every single day, either with an update from the day, like a recap. And we're going to have people interview throughout the day that'll tell us where they're from and kind of some of the car stuff that they're doing, the times they're running. I don't know. I want to put together 5 or 6 questions that I can ask everybody that are easy to answer and everything like that. So anyways, I'll let the podcast run here for Ryan Mueller. If you know of anyone that you feel like would be a good guest, please reach out to us. Let us know if you know them personally. That helps us as far as like opening the dialogue there, help introduce us. We post podcasts from here until after Rocky Mountain Race Week. We're going to do as many as we can. So hit the subscribe button on this channel that you're on so you'll be updated whenever we load stuff. We do YouTube Tuesdays and Fridays every week at 7 p.m. We have Instagram account that we post on almost every day, Facebook that we post on almost every day, and TikTok, which we post about once or twice a month. So anyways, now we can talk to Ryan Mueller. All right, guys, here we go. All right, guys, we have Mr. Ryan Mueller with us today, and I'm so pumped about the stories that you're going to be able to tell us today. Are you ready for this?
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Yeah, man, definitely. And we'll get into more of like an introduction here in just a few minutes, but I wanted to just pick your brain right out of the gate. What is your preferred power plant if you're helping somebody with their goals? You like NA, turbo, blowers, and why?
Well, I mean, honestly, each engine type does have its pros and cons, depending on what that customer's individual goals are. But if I had to pick one, you said, hey, pick one, you can't have them all. What are you going to say is going to be the best thing for what you want to do? If I'm going for all-out power, I would have to say it's going to be a turbo combination. The benefits of a turbo are going to be that you do not have any parasitic loss because it's not crank-driven, you know, like a supercharger would be, for example. Mm-hmm. You're using the engine's exhaust to turn it into power, which is a really cool thing because that's just waste otherwise that you're actually turning into a power source. So that's a really good benefit of a turbo. And one of the things as far as drag racing, street racing, prep racing, no prep, the whole deal, you can ramp in boost, you can ramp out boost, which is a great power management feature, you know, where with a supercharger, you're trying to pull timing out, add timing, you know, to try to manage that. And then, of course, you have a more evenly dispersed cylinder pressure versus like a supercharger is going to be instant boost. So that's extremely hard on your components because you have a lot more of a shock load, kind of like what you would have with nitrous, where it's instantaneous. So that's a lot more load immediately versus, you know, dispersing it as a gradual effect that you would have with the turbo.
Right.
And then last but not least, the reason the turbo takes the cake would be you're not putting any pressure on that crank snout. You know, ripping up on that crank snout can cause bearing load failures. It can also flex the crank or possibly break off the snout on the crank, which party's over once that happens.
Yeah, you have nothing powering anything at that point.
Yeah.
There's no turning of any belts or anything then.
You got it.
That's awesome. So I think I'm definitely along the same route as you. I really like the, you know, quote unquote efficiency of a turbo setup. And the other side of that too is like, you know, you buy a blower, you want to upgrade blowers, you got to buy another blower. A lot of times, you know, you can eat out, but you know, turbo stuff, you can $600,000-$800,000 more money, pull the old one off, put the new one on, you know. And I know there's expensive turbos too, but you know, us in my world, it's I don't spend that much money on turbos. So let's go way back before Mueller Performance. Let's talk about like 11-year-old Ryan. Is he a car guy?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Basically, from the time that I could walk, talk, smell, hear, I've loved engines. I've always been intrigued with mechanical things in general, even, you know, with how they work and how you can make them perform better. So, you know, but yeah, loving engine sounds and stuff like that. Even, you know, like on bicycles and stuff like that, we were putting Coke cans on the tire to make it sound like a motor, you know.
My kids found that out the other day. So they rode the entire street with one had a Coke can and one had well, it was a Miller Lite can, and one had a plastic bottle.
So one of them was running on alcohol, is what you're saying.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So was there, you know, typically if people are in, if they're, you know, enthusiasts early on, that generally means there's a family member or somebody that kind of influenced your hobby. Was there anybody like that for you?
Yeah, I'd have to give my dad 100% credit on that. He's definitely the one that got me interested in automotive hobbies. He had a 72 Oldsmobile Cutlass.
Oh, yeah.
And it had a 350 in it originally, but he pulled that out. He put a 455 cubic inch Oldsmobile motor in it with the Lunati solid flat tappet cam, and port and polished the heads, shaved down the pedestals to convert it to a, you know, a roller rocker with stud mount, so he'd have adjustability and whatnot, and open up the push rod holes so he could run bigger push rods, port match the intake and the headers, you know, and that's, you know, kind of before they had matching stuff. Yeah. Absolutely. So, you know, MSD ignition, Holley double pumper, B&M transmission, but, you know, around that same time that I was that age is when he had that car, and he would take me for rides in it, go to the drag strip on weekends, stuff like that. And the saddest thing about that whole deal is that Holley carburetor would leak, which, you know, that happens sometimes. But the work light, I guess he's thinking maybe he left the work light on back when that happened, but the work light fell down, broke, started a fire, and burned the whole car down. So he had a lot of money in that car between the paint job and everything else, because it was, you know, full frame off resto mod kind of deal. But it was a beautiful piece. Really enjoyed it growing up.
That's wild, man. So is that the one, like he talks about that car all the time? Oh man, that Olds I had, or did he?
Oh yeah.
Else after that?
Yeah, I always ask him if he's ever going to do another car. He's like, man, I just don't think I could do it. You know, I got that taste in my mouth. What happened went wrong. You know, I just couldn't get another one. You know.
That's rough. Oh, I can't imagine.
But he loves talking about it. He does like to talk about what all he did on it, for sure.
Yeah. Now, is he local to you? You guys get to hang out a bunch?
He's actually he just retired farming. He's out at Stanford, out by Abilene, is where he lives at.
Oh, cool.
Lived there his whole life. It's
That's
like
so
40 miles north of Stanford is 40 miles north of Abilene. That's where I grew up at.
that's one of my questions too. Is have you always kind of been? Because you're like Fort Worth, right?
Actually, I'm about 2 hours northeast of Dallas is where I'm at. It's in Paris, Texas.
Oh, okay. I was putting you in completely the wrong area. I was thinking Paris was like just north of Dallas, but it's not just north.
Yeah, we've got an Eiffel Tower even too.
There you go. There you go. Well, I mean, if a city's name's Paris, you got to, right? I think that's part of the mix.
Oh yeah, it's not quite as big as theirs, but
Hey,
it's a
close
funny,
enough.
funny deal.
That's awesome. Well, let's talk. So, car guy growing up, what'd you get to learn to drive in?
Actually, I learned how to drive one of the, more challenging things growing up versus, the kids nowadays, all they can drive is automatics. If you gave them a
Hmm.
standard transmission, they wouldn't know what to do. So
Right.
the truck that I learned on is called the Great White, is what I always called it. And it was a 84 Chevy Cheyenne 3/4 ton single cab long bed with a 4-speed manual in it, 410 gears, 4-wheel drive, big BF Goodrich tires on it, and
That's awesome.
just a cool
Probably
truck.
the
But that's what I
probably
learned
the
how to
easiest
drive.
thing to learn to operate a clutch on because the torque of that you just basically just roll off the clutch and it just takes off. Just
Oh yeah,
go very fast, but it takes off.
yeah. It had a 4-barrel on it, so it sounded really cool when you roll into it in a low gear too, kind of that whoop, So
Yep, that's awesome. So, what was your first car? Was that your first car then? Like, did you drive that every day?
actually, that was a truck that we used on the farm a lot. We used it to pull cotton trailers and stuff like that. So I was
Mm-hmm.
pulling trailers at a pretty young age. But my first truck was actually a '85 Chevy Silverado square body,
Mm-hmm.
single cab, short wide bed. It originally had a 305 that had a lot of miles, so we took that
Mm-hmm.
out and put a 350 in it with a performer intake and 650 carb. And man, I love that truck. I'd like to have it back. It was a
Right.
really clean ride, but a lot of good
Yeah,
times had in that truck.
that's awesome. That's awesome. So, living there, I mean, obviously, it sounds like maybe your first job, which is a question I ask everybody, was probably on the farm. You should,
Absolutely. You guessed it. So
and
driving tractors, hoeing cotton, hauling hay, all that kind of stuff, which is a
mm-hmm.
good way to come up. I mean, you learn a lot of morals and hard work characteristics coming up in an upbringing like that. It makes you appreciate things for sure.
I did that for about a month and a half one summer with my stepdad, who was cotton and soybeans. And I was like, I've had enough of that. That's enough for me. So I went to work at Kroger at the grocery store in town. I didn't
Yeah.
like working before school and after, you know.
Yeah, that ain't no lie.
Man, because those guys will put in, 80, 100-hour weeks. When they're working for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember my friends going and doing stuff, and I wanted to go, but Dad's like, "Oh no, we ain't done yet."
Yeah, you're like, hang on, it's not too dark to see yet.
Absolutely.
That's funny. So, before you open the shop, because I mean, at this point, that's probably why a lot of folks know you, is performance stuff. But what did you do before you opened the Mueller Performance?
Well, I've had a lot of jobs throughout the years. When you're
Mm-hmm.
younger, you kind of have that ambition to try
Yep.
to just really succeed and make money. Before you kind of figure out who you are, even. But
Yeah.
the big notable career thing that I did in the past was in the mortgage industry, and I worked my way up in that and actually built up to where I had my own business with 30 loan officers. And then, of
Dang.
course, you saw the news back when that industry tanked, so you don't have to guess.
Yeah. What happened there?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that's whenever that kind of went down, I tried a few other things, but just really wasn't in it. So I finally thought, you know what? I don't care if I make a ton of money. I just want to do something that I actually have a passion for once. So I finally was talking to a guy that worked at a wholesale engine parts place, and I'm like, can you make a decent living doing that? He's like, oh yeah, because I just thought, it's like $10 an hour AutoZone O'Reilly's and that's it. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, well, I mean, I want to make a little bit of money to just live comfortably. And
Right.
that guy was making a decent living. So I said, why not? I'll give it a shot. And man, I've never looked back ever since I did that.
That's awesome. So you were like performance parts. I'm in. I like car stuff. This works for me. I'm down that road.
Yes, sir.
That's awesome. So, all right. Before we really dig deep, though, all right, married, got any kids? You got to juggle all that family stuff.
I am married to an awesome wife. We haven't been married the entire time we've been together, but we've been
Yep.
together about 15, 16 years. And I mean,
Dang.
I got to give her a lot of credit because I wouldn't be anywhere close to who I am as a person or where I'm at career wise without her. She's been my rock through the good times and the bad and always
That's cool,
supported me in
man.
my endeavors.
Yeah, mine just looks at me sideways about half the time. She's like, whatever. If you
Yeah.
like, she's like, don't put us
Yeah.
in a situation, but I'm behind you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
So, well, let me ask you this. So let's dig into Mueller Performance a little bit. Was it started as a part-time business, or were you like you worked for the other place and you're like, hey, I'm going to do this and I want to start this?
Yeah, actually, I'd been in the industry for around 10 years. You know, I've
Mm-hmm.
built up a lot of other businesses. I've built up other businesses' names, kind of put them on the map, you know,
Mm-hmm.
with the service and the knowledge that I had. And I wanted to start Mueller Performance really about 5 years into that trend, you know, and
Yep.
finally just decided, you know, I kept thinking, oh man, I need to wait till the right time, wait till the right time. And finally I said, you know what? The right time's never going to come. It's going to be now or never. So I just, you know, wanted to show people how I can, you know, help them achieve their goals and
Yeah.
give them a positive experience.
That's awesome. So you went right in, you're like, hey, current job, thanks, appreciate it. Boom, Mueller Performance is a thing. How do you what did that feel like? Like,
Well, in the beginning, it was a combination of scared and, you know, just really excited at the same time, you know. I mean, it
mm-hmm.
was a lot of work to do in a short period of time, you know, with I had a ton of vendor relationships, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still a huge undertaking to go through all the applications, the requirements, the buy-ins, you know, it's a serious commitment to get all that set up. And even just setting up a business in general,
Yeah.
there's a lot more to it than meets the eye.
Yeah. You definitely don't decide one day, hey, I just want to do this, and then you're like, you're doing it the next. It's a whole process. So where can people find you? Like, I know you have a website that's great. It's very easy to use. So if you want to give us like the website and then like your Facebook and Instagram and YouTube handles and all that kind of stuff, and people can jot those down real quick. They'll also be down in the show notes with direct links to them too. But figure we can cover.
Okay. Yes, sir. So the website is MuellerPart.com. So www.MuellerPart.com. There's no S on it. Somebody already had that domain name. So that was that. But I'm always adding things to that website with the free time that I have, which is not very often, but I try to put stuff on there as I think of it as we go kind of deal. And Instagram, working on getting a bigger presence on that. I do a lot of stuff on Facebook, but Instagram, I'm trying to give some more attention, and that is at Mueller Parts. That does have an S on it.
Okay.
And then the web or the Facebook page is Mueller Performance. Simple there, real easy to find, and definitely give us a like and a follow. We're always putting cool builds, customers testimonials, customers, you know, passes at the drag strip where they're getting new personal bests, things like that. I like to celebrate any and all victories for guys, or just even if
Mm-hmm.
they're having fun with it, I like to share it. And then phone number, you can call us anytime on the shop phone. It's 903-209-3287. And then, of course, I've got the old trusty email, which is Ryan, RYAN, at MuellerPart.com. That's again with no S, MuellerPart.com.
Cool. Awesome. Awesome. All right. So everybody write all that down. Again, they will be in the show notes just so you can go in there and contact him. So I see a ton of your setups, you know, because you don't, it's not just engines, it's trans and I mean, you've heads and cams and all this kind of stuff. So, and converters and you offer basically a whole setup. So I see a lot of your decals and people tagging you in drag car stuff. Is that, so drag car stuff, is that kind of like that was your sport, so that's what you followed? That's, you know, were you like a drag racer and then you kind of morphed into, you know, let's do a business, let's help these people build their cars?
Well, I'm definitely into drag racing for sure. I mean, anything where you can put as much power as possible to the ground and sling it down to the other end of the track as fast as possible, I love, you know. So that's definitely, you know, one of my favorite things. I mean, I don't have a drag race car myself, you know, or anything like that, but I do have a truck that I tinker with. It's a 2000 Z71 with a 408 LS in it. That's got some LS3 heads, 11.5-to-1 compression, a 4L80
Man,
swap, 456 gears, 35-inch mud tires. So people see it,
street
it kind of
truck.
looks like a lifted truck, you know, and all that, but
Mm-hmm.
it makes 600 horsepower, so it catches people off guard.
That's awesome. And really like that's one of my questions is what you feel like is a good street car number, but we'll get to that here in just a second. So um,
Gotcha.
so you got the truck. Have you built anything for yourself before that was drag car related? You know what I mean?
No drag race cars for myself. It seems like since I've been in the industry, I've been almost too busy to have a hobby of my own
Yeah,
because I'm kind of
I can
supporting
appreciate
the
that.
other guys and living
Yep.
through them, you know. But I mean, it is like having your own car out there when you've got a customer that you see them make a killer pass and you were a part of it. That is
Hmm.
very rewarding.
Well, and that actually leads us right into the next thing here is like how important are goals, okay, when someone calls you? Like um what and here's how I have it worded. What are items on the quote unquote goal list that you want to know, like that you, Ryan Mueller, want to know?
Well, I think goals are extremely important to make sure that a customer is getting the right combo and to make sure that they're satisfied with their purchase. And that also ensures that it'll be a reliable setup for the foreseeable future so they don't spend more time in their garage than they do on the street or at the drag strip, you know.
Hmm.
But every build that I do is tailored to each specific customer versus cookie cutter engines that are out there that are kind of pawned off on a customer, you know, just to make a sell. There's a lot of companies that'll do that. Hey, we got this sitting here. Here you go. You know, which, you know, if you really just want something over versus a specific goal, then, you know, have at it. Sometimes that's the way to go. But uh, the goals that I like to hear are, what kind of racing do you want to do? Is
Hmm.
there a specific power number that you want to reach? Is there a specific time that you want to run, like in the eighth or the quarter mile? Is this thing, you know, are we street racing? Are we weekend warrior? Are we, you know, drag racing? What kind of racing is it? You know, those kind of things are very critical in getting the right setup because your camshaft is going to be different for your power band. You know,
Hmm.
if you're helping somebody select a converter and whatnot, they're going to want something different for each setup. Gears, dry sump versus wet sump. I mean, those are all critical things that you have
Yeah.
to know goals.
And you know, it's funny. I think we have been spoiled with Facebook and the internet and YouTube and 1320 video. Um, Everybody needs to make 1,000 horsepower now. You know, oh, I need to make 1,000.
Yeah,
Like, dude, do you know like 1,000 horsepower is a bunch? You know, a lot
absolutely.
of times, like for folks first building stuff, like the old truck I have, I mean, it's a, you know, 210,000 mile 4.8, 78 millimeter turbo. I mean, like it's the, you know, there's probably 1,000 or 10,000 of these builds out there, you know. Um, but for me, like we went in with the goal of I want to do rolling burnouts and it drive well enough that I could take my kids and get ice cream. Like that was our entire goal. So I've got
Heck,
a real
yeah.
good friend. Yeah, I got a real good friend that works at Comp Cams, and I called him and I'm like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. This is it. And what's funny is I've probably put, I don't know, 400, 500 miles on the truck, something like that, since I've had it right now. The turbo's been on for a year, but it took us a long time to get tuning right. Because of my fault, not anybody else's my fault stuff. But you can drive, like I would turn my wife loose in that truck. Like she can get in and go and drive around. And what's funny to me is like so many people, I feel like reach for, the number goal. Like our goal for that truck was 600 wheel because I wanted to make that. Like that was I was like, I want 600 wheel, I want rolling burnouts, and I want ice cream. But like that's what we're gonna get is burnouts and ice cream. That's the main thing. So
Oh yeah, get your priorities in line.
well, and I think a lot of times people will call and they'll or like I'll be talking to them at a meet or something like that, and they're like, oh man, I want to be faster than so and so, or I want to do this. I'm like, yeah, but how are you going to get there? Like, what suspension pieces are you going to do? Like over 500 or 600 wheel horsepower. If you actually want to like make traction, like you're upgrading drive shafts and axles and all that, tires, all that kind of stuff. And they're like, oh yeah, yeah. Because the 240 horsepower you have in the truck now, it burns the tires off, So.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of that people don't realize. When they say I want to outrun this guy, they don't know everything that goes into the combo. So, you
Right.
quote them an engine, like what will outrun that guy. And then they're not even thinking about the turbos, the fuel system,
Yep.
the suspension, the transmission, the rear end, all those things like you're talking about. They got to be
Yeah.
able to handle that power too. So
Yeah.
it's not a flip a switch and it's done overnight kind of deal.
Oh,
For
for
sure.
sure. So I name dropped these two guys when I reached out to you, but I want to talk about the conversation you had with Chris Harper about the Warhawk when he, started escalating that car to where it's at now. Obviously, like how does that conversation go when he calls you and goes, "Hey, high fours isn't fast enough anymore"? Like how does it work?
Well, I had dealt with Chris in the past. I'd spec'd a camshaft. He had a pro-charged Corvette, that I'd dealt with him in the past on. So when it came time to kind of take this Warhawk to the next level, he reached out to me. And the thing that I like the most about Chris is he understands engines for one. I mean, he's very savvy when it comes to the engine setups. He's got Harper Performance where he does installs and helps people out with their setups, of course. And he's also the kind of guy that would rather spend a little bit more to do it right versus taking shortcuts and trying to do more with less than what should be used, So he's really a great guy to work with on that because he'll say, what is the right way to do this versus what is the cheapest way that I can possibly do this?
Yep.
And, Chris and Jonathan, those are awesome guys. I'm lucky to call them a customer and also a friend, and I can't ask for a better couple of guys to run my motor and also my sticker on their car because those are some sweet rides for sure.
Yeah, and I'm excited. So a guy here in town that runs a body shop called Old School Sheet Metal Repair, I've had him on the podcast, and I'm going to be doing another one with him like end of next week, I think. And he's been working on Jonathan's car, getting all the sheet metal work done and getting ready to paint it. So, and then sometime early next week, I'm going to run up to Chris's shop and sit with him and Jonathan again and get some updates on all their projects and what they got going on in the shop and all that kind of stuff. So great.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So what all parts do you offer as Mueller Performance? What all's available through you?
Like on the engine side, to kind of throw a few of the big brand names that I carry, that I sell on a really constant basis would be like Brodix blocks and heads, Dart blocks, CP Carrillo pistons. I also sell a ton of Holley engine management systems because, you got to be able to manage that power efficiently or it's going to cost you a lot of money in the long run. And then, You've got Aeromotive and Waterman for the fueling system, used transmissions and converters. So basically, I've got 68 vendors direct, so I can supply
Wow.
the majority of what you need for a race car.
That's crazy. So, how do you decide when to add a manufacturer or a vendor?
Well,
Like,
the first and foremost would be the quality that that vendor is putting out. I mean, that's rule number one for me. Everything that I sell has to be a quality product. And then after that, I base it off of demand. You know, what are my
mm-hmm,
customers looking for, or what do we need to make it work properly for them, you know? And
mm-hmm.
then third, of course, is availability. If they can supply the product, because you can have the best product in the world, but if you can't supply it, then
If you can't
it
buy
might as
it,
well
then
not
what's the point?
exist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Oh
So,
yeah.
obviously, I've dug through and I've seen some short and long block setups. You have a long block that is rated to 2,000 horsepower. Dude, that's insane. That's insanity. Like, tell us about that thing.
Well, that's a really nice piece, you know, and this is,
Mm-hmm.
you know, these numbers are based off real world experience. They're not, hey, you know, we're going to tell you it's rated for this and we'll see if it works. This is real life setups that we've had out there on a constant basis, so
Man.
we basically know what works with it. But that's a Dart SHP Pro block. Uh, so that comes with main studs already in it. It's got billet splayed main caps on it, priority main oiling, and of course, last but not least, the 6-bolt setup. So you've got clamping
Mm-hmm.
force of your heads to keep from lifting them, which is a problem on 4-bolt LSs when you get up there in power.
Yeah.
Uh, got 1/2-inch head studs, those CP Carrillo pistons I was telling you about with gas nitrided stainless steel top rings. The gas nitride doesn't burn off. Old plasma
Mm-hmm.
moly stuff that they used to do, that just burns off anytime you get any heat on it, so it doesn't last and
Mm.
doesn't protect the ring. And then 230 wall wrist pins. Of course, you got to have a good thick wrist pin to handle that load. Oliver Speedway rods in it. That's a American made rod that's been around about as long as any of them. And there's a lot of companies that you can tell by looking at their design copied Oliver, but Oliver's one of the original tried and trues that
Mm-hmm.
knows how to make a connecting rod. Uh, One of the newer things is that Dart 8 counterweight crank. You know, that's created a lot of buzz over the last few years, but it's the only LS crank that has 8 full-size counterweights. There's a lot of 8 counterweight cranks out there now, but this one has 8 full-size counterweights because the block is made to clear those full-size counterweights. You cannot put that in an
Wow.
LS without doing extensive clearancing, basically, you know. Then on the cylinder head side of things, we got the BR113 cathedral ports, like what we have on Harper's car.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Actually got with my good friends at Brodix to develop that. I said, hey, there's a dire need for cathedrals. I know you guys had never got around to making them in the past, you know, so let's get together and make something that'll handle a lot of boost. And, you know, we did the chamber design where it forces the pressure down versus out. There's a lot of heads that they sweep real far out on the chamber, so that tends to push out head gaskets. Well, this head is really good to combat against that. And then on something this high end, I do upgraded copper seats, so you have better heat transfer from the valve to the head because you got coolant running through, or water rather, running
Mm-hmm.
through the head. So that's dissipating that heat. So that's number one and making your valves last. And then of course you got to have titanium on the intake to keep it lightweight, but also be the strongest valve possible. And then Inconel on the exhaust to handle the highest amount of heat
Yeah.
possible, you know.
Wow. That's cool. You talked over my head. So,
Hey man, all I can do to help. You know, I try to educate every single customer that I talk to in that same way, so they're not like, well, hey, this is $17,000. That's great, but what am I getting? You know, so
yeah,
I explain,
I
here's
feel
what
like
you're
that
getting.
that sounds inexpensive. Now I know there's a ton of other parts that they're going to buy because to get to that, but like I feel like that's a pretty solid setup for that kind of money.
Absolutely, I try to be pretty competitive on that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the kind of guy that's gonna make my monthly living off of one customer. I try
There you
to
go.
give people a competitive price so they have a great experience. And instead of me spending a ton of money on marketing, they're going
Mm-hmm.
to go refer people to me. And
Yeah.
there is no marketing you can buy that is as good as a referral.
Well, and a sticker on the back of somebody that's whipping people across the country.
Oh yeah.
That always helps.
Absolutely.
So, all right.
Absolutely.
So since my mind is expanded with all the stuff you were just talking about, let's get just a little more technical, and then I've probably got to get to where I'm wrapping it up pretty quick. I've got to get back to work. Oof.
Alrighty.
Something with his day job. So, how does runner length affect the overall performance of an engine? Like, because we see low and high ram, Holly intakes, and all that kind of stuff. Like, help me understand and everybody listening, like how runner length will affect that.
All right. Well, first, the length of the runner kind of depends on the desired result of the application, I would say. Mm-hmm. I personally am a big fan of the longer runners that'll produce more low to mid-range torque, but you also have to consider the sizing of that runner when it comes to the lengths, because if it is a large runner, then a larger runner is actually going to make the torque move up in the power band in the same way that a short runner would. But short runners, they will move the torque up in the RPM range. Your peak torque is going to be way higher mm-hmm. on it. Not going to make more necessarily, but it's going to be moved higher on it. But in some cases, it can make more top end horsepower due to the direct approach of the runner,
Gotcha.
So that helps out. And then, so it depends on, your setup as far as what kind of weight, what kind of max RPM, even what kind of cubic inch, if you've got a little 5.3 and, you try to put a intake that's made for higher RPM horsepower and torque, it's not going to behave as well as a longer runner that's going to help you out in that torque department. So, most of the time, I'd rather have a properly sized long runner, as long as that clearance permits.
So what you're saying is like the Holly high ram on a all stock 5.3 looks super cool, but it's probably going to hurt you a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then how about this? So, everybody, like all the LT stuff is direct injection and all that kind of, like, what's your, I don't even know how to ask this question, so I'm going to just kind of word it in carb terms, right? So carburetor's up top, fuel comes down. What is injector placement like? How does that affect performance? Or, compared direct injection to like port injection in an intake?
Gotcha. So direct injection is definitely more efficient in the atomization process because you're putting it right there on top of that piston. So you're taking advantage of every single drop of fuel that you're putting in there. So you can get away with a little bit higher compression before you run into detonation. But the issue is, most of the direct injected platforms do not have a ton of support in the aftermarket. Mm-hmm. So making that port style, if you're doing just a regular port like a traditional LS injection, then it's going to be a lot more cost effective way to go. There's tons of support for it. So, there's plenty of, combos out there that are just direct port versus direct injected that are working efficiently thanks to systems like a Holly Dominator where you can tune to compensate for any shortcomings that you deal with,
Right.
But like a direct injection on the new LT motors, that's a 2,000 PSI line pressure. So that's extremely hard to support versus a 58 PSI. So you end up adding a second port injection,
Yeah.
So
wow,
aside from a Cummins diesel pump, Cummins, they support a lot of rail pressure, but they got a big old pump running.
Yep. Yeah, I was going to say, my brother's got a 2011 Ram, and he's done all dual pumps and all that stuff is. I don't know stuff about diesel stuff. All right. Well, first I want to say thank you for taking the time to go through this with us. I've got 4 more questions that I ask everybody. And then I think we'll probably wrap it up. That works for you.
All righty. Sounds like a plan.
So what is the fastest you've ever driven or ridden, I guess?
Fastest I've ever been, I believe, was about 178 miles per hour.
What was that in? That sounds fun.
A C6 Corvette. And my buddy riding with me was saying, slow down, slow down.
That's awesome. And then when you're working on a car, an engine, whatever. Are you a gloves or bare hands kind of guy?
Bare hands. You got to have the feel.
Got to be able to touch and feel stuff. That makes sense to me. All right, now let's flip it. Let's say you're working on something that's old and ratty, and you need to bust a bolt loose. Are you a WD-40 or PB blaster kind of guy?
PB blaster for sure.
Man, that's awesome. So I will say you're about 95% with everyone else. Everybody else grabs that. So I'm going to reach out to them in the next couple podcasts and ask if I can get one of those guys on to tell us a little bit about it. And then
that'd be cool.
The last one here, what is, if you had an unlimited budget, maybe you're not even writing the check, what is your dream car?
Man, it's kind of funny. A lot of people either love or hate C3 Corvettes, but like a 68 C3 Corvette, twin turbo LS, which is, it's not a crazy dream car. It's something that could become a reality down the road for me, So, I mean, that's kind of it. Something that I can drive on the street and take to the drag strip. It's not a trailer queen, but it definitely gets people's attention when it makes a lick, So that's.
Well, and I love the long nose of that car.
Oh yeah.
That's I feel I'm with you. I think that car is that's a great car. And especially I feel like that car is going to be the one that moves higher and higher and higher. So when it does come time for you to buy, it'll be super expensive, which will be
right. Yeah, they are going up all the time.
Cut it up. That's awesome.
Yeah, you could get them for $5,000 a dime a dozen, and now they want 10 to 15 for one that needs a lot of work. So it's already going up.
Yep, that's for sure. Well, hey, again, I really appreciate you sitting with us. I definitely want to have you on. I feel like these first round of podcasts with folks lets everybody get to know you, and then we can dig deep on the next one. And maybe as end of the season, maybe we can go over like a season recap of some of your folks that race some of your stuff. So.
Absolutely.
All right. Well,
yes, sir. That'd be great. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Hey, man, thanks a bunch. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. You have a great day.
All right, man. Thank you.